Good evening, everyone. I hope you all had a fantastic holiday weekend. And for those of you who it may not have been so fantastic for, I hope you keep feeling a little bit better. Now, oops, and I'm on the wrong screen because I had to get into Zoom. Here we are in Collectively Rewilding. But tonight, we actually jump into, I think it's this one, yes, into micros and sprouts. And then this is totally applicable for where we are since we just started those sprouts and the microgreens yesterday, right? Then this is going to walk us through some problems that can happen with the sprouts. Not so much the microgreens, which I'm pretty sure that should not involve soil. I thought that the sprouts were not with soil. Okay, we're going to have to do a little bit of just checking again. Are sprouts grown in a medium or with water? Grown in water. Okay, I just wanted to double check because I had an awful lot of imagery there that didn't fit my thought process on what we were talking about. So, 5 reasons your seeds didn't sprout. So, you planted seeds days, weeks ago, and nothing's come up, huh? Seeds are pretty incredible little things, but they are also incredibly picky. They're like Goldilocks in the story about the 3 bears. They need everything to be just right for them to grow. They won't, for example, wake up until the weather is just right, not too hot, not too cold, but just in their ideal temperature range. Make the mistake of planting seeds when it's too cold, and those seeds will wait until it warms up. Or they'll rot in the soil long before it's time for them to germinate. If, on the other hand, you try to plant them when it's too hot outside, they might rear their little plant heads only to sink back down when they realize the sun is just too bright for their liking. Basically, to get a seed to sprout successfully, you need to get the planting depth, the water delivery, the timing, and the soil temperature just right. Let's look in more detail at the reasons the seeds you planted might not be coming up to say hello. So I feel like she's talking about seedlings, right? So that doesn't really fit. So let's go ahead and we're going to X right on out of that. We just don't need that right now. How many times can you harvest microgreens? All right, so with the microgreens and the sprouts, they should be up in 5 to 10 days, depending on the 2 different types for what we have planted here at Collectively Rewilding. Microgreens, again, will be the ones that were grown in a medium, in that soil, right? And there's a lot of different ways that you can grow them. The ones that you get in the grocery store have that artificial bottom mat thing, right? And so there's, of course, more than one way to go about growing microgreens. We're growing them in the soil. Microgreens benefits. Microgreens rank among the simplest, smallest, and yet most nutritious and delicious plants you can grow. There are many rewarding aspects to starting these quick-growing plants for yourself. Perhaps the best thing about microgreens is how easy they are to grow at home. Not just at home, but indoors, even right next to your kitchen sink. You don't have to wait for a spring thaw. You don't have to wait for the oppressive heat of summer to pass. You can grow them at any time of year, whether there's a chance of frost outside or not, because you grow microgreens indoors. That means they're not affected by the weather. The only thing that matters is the environment you create for them. Microgreens are ready to harvest in just a matter of days and can grow entirely under artificial light. I'm a big fan of microgreens as an indoor gardening project, and I love the look of a tray bursting with tiny green leaves. I grow them in my basement. Proof that you can grow sprouts and microgreens just about anywhere. We too are growing them in the basement, right? Perhaps she means an unfinished basement. Ours is finished, so that is a little bit of a difference. If we do find that it's too warm in my office, we may have to look at moving them into the laundry storage area that is as far away from heat as I can get it inside, or perhaps under the stairs storage. But I think that we leave the closet door open for that a little too often. So Grow your microgreens whenever you need that garden fresh flavor. And we're going to add wherever you need it, right? Now, continuing on, can microgreens regrow after cutting? To harvest microgreens, you simply cut each baby stem above the soil line. Unlike with sprouts, you won't eat the entire plant, just the stem and leaves, because the roots will be covered in growing medium. Here is, in my opinion, the biggest negative to growing your own microgreens. These plants are a single-use deal, a one-and-done crop. Many of us gardeners grow accustomed to dealing with herbs and lettuce plants that are cut and come again, or tomato plants that give us clusters of ripening fruit for weeks. Those plants only produce more for us after we harvest from them. The idea, then, of cutting plants at the outset of their lives and preventing any future growth can be a little disturbing, maybe even heartbreaking. We're drawn to plants that we can keep alive for a long period of time, plants whose entire life cycles we can enjoy, and microgreens are not those plants. Regrowing microgreens is not worth it. Microgreens are young plants, and many won't be able to handle the shock of having their leaves cut so soon, though some microgreens are better at regrowing than others. In order to regrow, you'd have to have at least an inch of the shoot, the young stem, and the young plant would have to have established good roots already. Even then, the flavor could be affected and their growth could be slowed. I find it's best to start fresh with a new batch of seeds each time. After I harvest from my microgreens tray, I dump the soil and spent microgreen seeds into my compost pile and start fresh with a new batch. At least it's not a complete waste. The roots of those microgreens and their used growing medium will go into the compost pile, where they will turn into organic, nutrient-dense matter that will nourish future plants to come. It's the circle of the garden. Learn to grow microgreens with Gardenery, right? Well, we kind of are in a way, and so we'll stop there. Oh, and let me share that with you guys, actually. Oh, I can't right-click it and get it. Let's go here. And just in case anybody was interested in the first article there, both here. Yes, we'll put both of those articles into Collectively Rewilding. All right, and in fact, we could move the 5 reasons over here to starting, but I'll deal with that later. And we'll jump down into our yarn yard for tall tales base, and I'll plant both of those articles there for you. Post, plant. There is the information on the microgreens, and here is the information on 5 reasons your seeds didn't sprout. All right. Now we will jump out of here. Although, no, I don't think it shows the icon for Collectively Rewilding. So we'll just come into Collectively Rewilding and have that as our backdrop there. All right, guys, let's jump into Leaves, Roots, and Fruit by Nicole Burke, otherwise known as Gardenery. And we are on to care, and it's still talking about the leaves and primarily the greens and sprouts, I believe. Care for water. When you grow sprouts and microgreens, you're cultivating seeds at their earliest stages. As you now know, seeds require water to wake up from dormancy. Then they swell and expand rapidly in order to sprout. Once the little plants are growing, water works to distribute their energy and nutrients. So it's critical that the small leaves never lose moisture before you harvest them. Sprouts should be rinsed with water at least twice a day. Oops, I better do it again then. I thought it was once a day. To do so, you'll cover all the seeds with water and then let the seeds drain quickly. Each time water washes over a seed, the seed coating dissolves a little more and the seed absorbs more moisture. Within a matter of days, these little bursts of water power the growth of the sprouts. Shoots and microgreens don't need rinsing. Instead, maintain an even moisture level throughout the greens tray. These seeds are tiny and just beginning their growth, so it's important not to disturb them in the soil. For this reason, it's best to water from under the plants by setting microgreens on a tray with drainage holes that's placed on top of a tray that doesn't drain. The need for water for microgreens and sprouts will depend on your setup's temperature and airflow. Don't automate your watering. Instead, touch the soil with your finger daily to check for moisture. If the soil is slightly moist, there's no need to water. If it's dry to the touch, add an inch of water to the bottom tray. The soil in the top tray will slowly absorb the water throughout the day and release that moisture into the tiny seedlings. Water is key to the growth of sprouts and greens, but a little goes a long way. Work watering into your daily schedule and you'll never have to worry whether the tiny leaves are drying out. As long as the light is consistent, successfully growing sprouts and greens depends on your attention to their water needs more than anything else. If the sprouts or microgreens dry out during the growing process, they'll likely wilt or stop growing before you get to eat them. Put simply, drying out equals dying out. Nutrients. Step 1 is meant to make starting to garden as simple as possible. Speaking of simple, all the nutrition that sprouts and microgreens need to support their growth to this point is already inside the seed itself. Microgreens benefit from added nutrients only if the growth of the plant seems to slow or if the small leaves change color. If your microgreen shows signs of slowing growth, you could sprinkle earthworm castings or a little compost on the soil medium, but be careful not to cover these teeny tiny plants. I've found that the nutrients within the seeds themselves are more than enough to see the plants all the way through to a healthy harvest, even when I'm growing larger microgreens. The fact that these small leaves need so little to start growing is good news for your own nutritional needs too. Inside each little sprout are all the nutrients that would eventually be dispersed throughout the mature plant's stems, flowers, and fruits. But because you're just growing a plant to the sprout or micro stage, your body gets to benefit from all those nutrients in just a few bites of greens. Tending. If small growing space and easy setup aren't enough to convince you to try these veggies, maybe this fact will. Microgreens and sprouts don't need much attention. Beyond keeping a regular watering schedule, the only other task for tending sprouts is to shift them in their container daily to ensure proper airflow and prevent mold or mildew. I suggest keeping sprouts near your kitchen sink so that tending becomes an easy part of your daily routine. Each time you step up to rinse the dishes, you'll see the sprouts and you can keep track of their growth. Rinse them when needed and know when they're ready to harvest. For shoots and microgreens, you're in charge of monitoring the light every day, checking the tray water level, and ensuring that there's equal growth for all the greens. I keep my microgreens in the basement and make it a point to head down there in the mornings and evenings to turn the grow light on and off to check the water level. If the greens are holding too much water, I turn on a fan. I also run my hands along the greens to help strengthen their roots and shake free any seeds that may be hanging on to the first leaves. This tending takes 1 or 2 minutes per trip downstairs, so 5 minutes a day at most. Then all that's left is harvesting and starting again. Small leaves mean small chores. These are tiny tasks you can do in a matter of minutes each day, yet you'll reap platefuls of greens in exchange. Try it, and you'll see that little time can equal loads of high-quality results. Few garden projects will cost you so little in time, space, and money, yet give you so much in flavor, nutritional content, and consistent harvest. Harvest. Time. Though the tending needs for microgreens and sprouts aren't much, you may find yourself obsessed with checking in on these tiny plants each day, not because they need your help, but because you can't believe how quickly they're changing. These plants double, if not quadruple, in size every day, which means the time that you'll get to eat the the leaves of your labor is fast approaching. Sprouts can be harvested in 5 to 7 days and microgreens in 10 to 21 days from planting. Harvests come quickly because these leaves are the very start of the plant's lives. If you've been looking for a quick gardening win, this is it. Production. Overheard at the farmer's market. 12 ears of corn, that'll be $3. 1 watermelon, $4 please. A pound of potatoes, that's $3.50. Oh, you'd like to try our microgreens? That'll be $100. I may or may not have exaggerated that last line, but if you've ever shopped for microgreens, I'm sure you'll agree. Buying these tiny leaves isn't cheap. In fact, it's likely the highest price you'll pay per pound of produce. The pricing reflects the logistics required to get these greens to you in a way that you can actually eat and enjoy them. When you purchase microgreens or sprouts, you're not paying so much for the produce, but for the growing time, packaging, and transportation. You'll get much more bang for your buck when you get past the microgreens at the farmer's market and grow your own instead. You can expect one soup-sized bowl of sprouts per half-square-foot tray, or one jar filled a fourth of the way with seeds 5 to 7 days after first soaking. And for each square foot of microgreen seeds planted, you can harvest 1 or 2 bowls of microgreens within 12 to 24 days. Those harvests may not seem like much at first, but you'll soon find that in a small space and short time, you're growing sprouts and greens that would otherwise cost $5 to $10 a serving. And you'll enjoy these greens a split second after you cut them, so the taste and nutrition will be exponentially better than what you purchase at the grocery store or farmer's market. This homegrown bounty adds up quickly. You'll soon have your hands and mouth so full of so much leafy goodness that you'll feel like $1 million, or at least 100. Taking this step. Will you help me make a video? I asked my kindergartner in a way that wasn't really a question. I passed her a clear food container, small enough to fit in her little hand. Inside was a jumble of tiny green sprigs. This container had been sitting on my east-facing kitchen windowsill for the past week, and the microgreens were ready for cutting. I handed my daughter a pair of kindergartner scissors, grabbed my phone, and pressed the camera dot as she carefully held the scissors and slowly cut away at the greens. As soon as she finished, I posted the video online. The lighting was awful, and the videography even more so, but when I checked my phone one last time before bed that night, the response was surprising. Tens of thousands of views. Although I didn't have a large social media presence at the time, I had been posting hundreds of pictures of the impressive raised bed kitchen gardens, some more than 250 square feet, I'd worked on for the past couple of years. Yet none of the garden posts had received half the attention of that little harvest of microgreens. As a business owner who knows the importance of marketing and attention, I couldn't help but ask myself why everyone seemed to love this video. Was it the tiny hands, the homemade terrible quality of the film? The answer, I think, was that this video showed there was a lot you could grow and harvest in a tiny kitchen container. Then kindergartner and shaky videography only confirmed the approachability of this way of gardening. It felt like something everyone watching could do themselves, and everyone was right. Once you watch a handful of seeds become a jar full of sprouts, or toss your first bunch of microgreens into a salad, you might get hooked too. There's something magical about harvesting a homegrown leaf and adding it to your meal, even if you consume your garden-to-table experience in a single bite. Sprouts and microgreens are the perfect introduction to gardening. Small leaves are the first step in a plant's growth, so it makes sense to start here. These leaves aren't needy in terms of space or light. You can grow them nearly anywhere, from basements to sun porches and everything in between, and you'll get your first harvest in a matter of days. Because you're picking and eating greens at their earliest stages of growth, none of that great nutrition gets lost during transport. These greens go straight from their growing container to your plate. And because you're gardening inside, you can grow these greens year-round wherever you live. Whether it's scorching, freezing, or raining cats and dogs outside, you can be in the kitchen with fork in hand, eating yet another round of delicious and nutritious greens every single day of the year. Growing these tiny leaves has the power to transform you from someone who's buying everything you eat into someone who eats something money can't buy. This may be one small step in your garden journey, but it could become one giant leap for you as a gardener. Now that you've tasted what can happen when you follow the step-by-step system, you will love the flavors you're about to discover in step 2. The step-by-step to growing a daily supply of sprouts. My dog over there making pleasant noises. Setup. Gather supplies. See page 56. So we will go back a couple pages here. A draining tray, a non-draining tray, seeds, and water. Plant. Soak a few tablespoons of seeds in water for about 12 hours or overnight. After soaking, rinse the seeds, drain them, and set them aside on a tray with drainage holes, or place them in a jar with a perforated lid, laying the jar on its side to allow extra water to drain off. Rinse again 6 to 12 hours later. 10. Continue rinsing and spreading out the seeds every 6 to 12 hours until the sprouts are ready. Shift them in their container daily to ensure proper airflow and prevent mold or mildew. Harvest. Give the sprouts a final rinse and shake off any lingering seed coats, then enjoy. The step-by-step to growing a daily supply of microgreens. Gather the supplies, see page 47 this time. A seedling tray, a non-draining tray, seed starting mix, microgreen seeds, and water. Setup was to gather the seeds, sorry guys. Plant. Wet the seed starting mix so that it is damp to the touch but not dripping when held in your hand. Spread 1 to 2 inches of the damp mix on a tray with drainage holes. Scatter the seeds evenly on the moistened seed starting mix and cover lightly with a 1/2 inch of the damp mix. Cover with a dome or tea towel until the seeds sprout. Once the seedlings appear, after 1 to 4 days, uncover the tray and place it under grow lights. 10. Provide 10 to 12 hours of artificial light daily. Check the soil moisture daily by touching the soil with your finger. If the soil is slightly moist, there's no need to water. If it's dry to the touch, add more water as needed in the non-draining bottom tray. Harvest. Once the greens have grown their first or second set of leaves, cut the greens just above the soil line. Empty the tray and compost the soil. Clean and sterilize the tray by soaking in a mixture of 9 parts water to 1 part vinegar. Start again. And then we'll go into step 2, which is the herbs. And so I think it would be better to wait on that particular area and really think about what we're doing with the sprouts and microgreens. And so how about any of you here tonight? Have you guys started any of your projects yet?
I haven't quite yet, but like I said, I'm gonna start getting back into my shakes.
Right?
And I'm probably gonna start next week.
And so do you need to get seeds or anything, or are you already good to go and you just have to actually take that moment?
Um, no, I already got seeds
Mm-hmm.
and I got backup greens. I gotta make sure I have enough fruit.
Fruit.
hmm To put in my to make the juice with.
Oh, I gotcha. Right. You're not just going to blend sprouts or microgreens with water and drink.
Oh
That would
no.
make a lot of sense, right? Yeah, we'll probably use them more like on salads and um, soups and sandwiches.
hmm
Hmm. And so, what kind of fruits do you mix in with your microgreens or
I
with
use
your sprouts?
stuff
Excuse me.
like pineapple
Hmm.
or like preferably like green apples or anything that's kind of sweet or tangy.
Hmm. Have you tried Pink Lady apples?
Mm-mm.
They are the perfect blend of sweet and tart because sometimes a green apple is just a little more tart and you want some sweet. I'm telling you, pink ladies are my new favorite. I used to only eat green apples, but now, if I can, I would rather eat pink ladies.
Oh yeah.
You have to try them sometime. They're really good. And they're these nice little small apple size, so it's just easy to eat one in one setting, you know?
Hmm.
If we get apples out in the front yard, I'm going to try to get a pink lady.
Yeah.
And I don't really completely understand how it all works because I believe they have to graft these branches on to make them the fruit that you want. So the trees, the fruit trees, like Nicole Berg said, she wishes she'd put what it would be like, I think the ninth and 10th or seventh and eighth step, whatever it is, for berries and tree fruits, because it's just another level entirely, right?
Oh, just grafting?
Yeah, the whole process. So when I was looking into cherry trees, you can't graft either a sweet onto a tart or a tart onto a sweet, something like that was even more specific, right? And it gets really interesting. And there's a tree up the way from my house here that has two colors of fruit on it, where they've obviously grafted two different branches or three different branches from a different kind of apple tree. It's really neat looking.
Hmm,
So they have like red and yellow or red and green, I can't remember, apples in the season.
that's cool.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they cut it down. I didn't see them, I don't think, this year. So it was kind of a scraggly looking tree. It was older and hadn't been maintained very well. So, or maybe I just didn't pay attention. I was too much thinking about what I was doing on this little plot of land, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I already see one thing that I didn't do correctly for the sprouts, right? I didn't rinse them or soak them for 12 hours. So do you always do that, Kendez? Do you always soak your sprout seeds before you put them into your tray?
Mm-mm.
You don't? Okay. So go ahead and leave them and see if it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
But water them twice a day. And do you do it once or twice a day?
I did it once, but it takes about at least a couple of days for it to actually like, grow up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm gonna water them twice a day. Just that's what she's saying, and I'm gonna check it out and see. The last time that we tried it, I do remember that they got that mold and mildew. So hearing that about the fan, that's just excellent advice, right? I will probably go and order a small fan that I can put into the seed shelves. And then if I need to, I can always just reorganize it a little bit and bring the sprouts down in there as well. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a nice little additional step that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah, I was kept it by the kitchen window, and the window was always open. So
There
maybe.
you go. Right. Obviously, I probably won't have my kitchen window open when it's 32 degrees out right now. So we actually had snow here today. We had flowers yesterday, and today we have frozen snow covered flowers.
It's snowing somewhere in the world already.
Oh my goodness, that's so late. When I was a child, there was almost always a foot or so of snow on the ground at Halloween. We had to wear our coats over our costumes. Like it was horrible. But I remember it. And you were wearing your coat because you were freezing. You didn't. So, yeah. The times they are a changing, right?
Mhm.
And so there's, of course, always been a little bit of speculation when they talk about the global warming, and then there's the arguments therein, but that's not what I'm speaking of. Some people believe that if we get to a certain point within global warming, we're actually going to trigger another ice age. And so just
Man,
interesting to continue to watch and see if anything that they say over time has validity, right? Because nobody really knows.
all right.
Yeah.
If anything, they want to trigger an ice age because
Well,
they
I think
always.
an ice age would definitely be better than a super hot period, right? So I don't know. They
Well,
say that everything will rise so much in salinity and everything, but I would feel like why wouldn't it become more tropical on a larger part of the planet, like what is supposedly the environment they had during at least portions of the dinosaurs, right?
all right.
So
Who knows? They gotta say they're in their positions for some reason. So they gotta be like, oh, you don't want to not hire us.
well, there's a lot at stake when we talk about the environment that doesn't have anything to do with the environment, right? And there are a lot of people, and it doesn't have to talk about a political spectrum to say that science is not what science was intended to be any longer. And too often they have a prescripted outcome for their science, and that's not science. So there's just a lot out there, and then they do these theoretical models and everything. And I'm not saying that they don't have any validity. All I'm saying is no one knows whether they're going to have any validity or not until we see what actually happens because there's so many variables that no million brilliant people somehow magically working together as a singular unit of brain power could know all the variables that would go into any kind of climactic future, right?
Like, yeah, I remember when I was my freshman year in college, they had the Mythbusters.
Hmm.
They had busted some myths, but then Barack Obama told them to do it again, and then all of a sudden it passed, and I was just like, man.
I don't know about that, but it's it's not too far off of stories that I have as well, right? So I think that it's really a time of information, but also a time to look at everything with a very critical eye and then to note things yourself, right? And how much can we know? We know that the earth is overdue for several cycles. So while I will never think that human activity hasn't affected systems on this planet, we'll never know how much of it is a cyclical part of our planet's history or manufactured through our own machinations, right? And it's the reality of it is that it's somewhere in the middle of that. And again, how can they know all the variables to say, oh, though this is going to happen or this is going to happen? You know, they make it too absolute. That's where I think I really don't believe either side. And I'm simply going to do the things that I know are healthy where I'm at, which is another part of what collectively rewilding is about, right?
Mhm.
And noticing yourself, just those simple things. How much warmer or cooler was it where you were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, for some of us 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and noticing that more than paying attention to their words. And the things that worry me, the biggest thing that worries me is the lack of bugs. You
Mhm.
hardly get mosquito bites anymore. I don't know if you guys experience that as well, but I hardly get any kind of bug bites anymore. And don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about not getting bug bites in its way, but I am also at the same time because without bugs, the systems of life that we have currently on this planet will not work. Now, that doesn't mean that they couldn't modify themselves and become something else, but that period of transition, that's like the end of the dinosaurs, the end of the ice age, those big, big shifts, right? The bugs are life.
Well, if you want some mosquito bites, come on and visit me down in Georgia.
Yeah, you still get bit down there. Well, but we used to get bit up here, right? And we really don't. And so while it sounds like maybe you're ecologically on a better set of footing with that type of insect life, here we're not. And we are in a fishbowl. And that is something to be aware of. And that's another thing. I know I'm talking gardenery, but if you guys, let me just show you my desk here. I'm not all about sharing the camera. I'm too busy today. Didn't do my makeup. You know, I'm so bad about that. But I want to show you guys what my desk looks like because two books with a seasonal planner, three folders, and with the different purchases that I made while she was putting all these wonderful sales on, I went from having two video to 6 pages of video courses, and they're all going to be so great, and we're all going to benefit from them so much. But yeah, I'm gardeneried out right now. I totally own it. I have not that big of a problem with it. It's a little much for me to be completely real about it, but it's real. And it's so many of the things that I already believe myself in a formalized system. And that's what we're building here. And so, yes, we will do it a little bit differently than what Nicole Burke of Gardenery does it. However, her system is something to build on, right? It's not something like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We're not going to try to fix it. We're just going to make it our own, each of us. What I do differently than what she does may not be what you do differently than what she does. but she has that organic pest control. And I love her analogies, right? Yes, she went a little overboard on the defense offense analogy, in my opinion, but it's a good analogy. And then she has a similar analogy when she's talking about the arrangements of plants that she puts into her gardens, where she had the bouncers and the distractions, right? And then there was one other layer. And I think that that kind of imagery, along with the practices that she's describing, are beautiful. They're brilliant and they're simple and useful. So we will be talking gardenary quite a lot as we go through this. But I think that you guys are going to see what I'm seeing, that this woman really has a brilliant way of conveying the information into useful segments of action, which is what we were already starting with the garden planner, right? And then she's got this system built. So while we're going to use our own system in here, it is going to be influenced quite heavily by what we're doing out here as far as learning from the gardening consulting with the gardenary courses, the pest control. She has domestic pest control, right? We love our pets, but as far as the garden's concerned, they're pests. And so all of these things are going to be incredibly useful. And what I was thinking the other day, you know, Tammy talks about the difference between what she's experiencing in her master gardening program to what I'm experiencing with the gardenary system. And I think that they complement each other really nicely. The gardenary system is all about the practicality of success in gardening, right? That's the main goal. That's the outcome. That's that step-by-step. Manage that maintenance. It's 70% of success, and you're going to succeed as long as you just make sure they don't dry out almost, right? Like there's such a big chunk of success just by setting things up right. And then with Tammy's master gardening certification, she's learning about the plants themselves. And yes, we are learning about the plants in a specific way, as according to the gardenary system. However, she's learning so much more about all the plant families and the plants within those plant families and what it means to have them be this family or that family. And she's also probably utilizing primarily materials that are from her local area. Is that correct, Tammy? I know that one was like Southwest or something to that effect when you were showing us your books the other day.
Yes. So yes. Yeah, I use that book, and then yeah, that's from my area.
Mm-hmm.
Like where I, yeah. Sorry.
And so I think that, oh no, you're great, right? You're healing, and this is a late moment for you, as we know. So each of us taking an additional step to become master gardeners, if we choose to, will have a tremendous amount of value. However, I think that having this system backing up what you're doing, Tammy, is really going to cement that success part. You're getting all of this wonderful knowledge, but it doesn't necessarily equate to the kind of step-by-step, let's make it successful no matter where we're growing our plants, right?
Exactly. Mine's like more like teaching you science-based research, pointing you in that direction, and yeah, kind of
And
thing.
bending the soil, I would imagine, and things that are less about a fun way to continue to motivate yourself to get out and have that successful garden, right? When you said it like that, when you said it doesn't seem to be as fun. No, and I hear that, and it does make it harder to get through, but I think having these two things together is going to really just open up your world so tremendously. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and jump into that calendar. Another great class as always. And we will be back together tomorrow night to talk mostly the same kind of material, right? I was thinking today, and in fact, let's just jump into the garden planner for just a moment. And I was thinking about how this would work in not only lesson format as we have here, but also how we can look at it in a book format, and how looking at it in a book format can make it easier to take in here if we can get it to have the correct kind of layout. And so each of these is like a section inside of an overall chapter, and each one would have a page end. You would see at the end of the bulb planting section a page end, even if it was just beginning on the top of that page. And that would really help to break it up in our own minds. So perhaps the best way to do that here in our garden planner is to not worry about size so much, because this is a 52-week sort of a project. If we really needed to worry about that, if Julia May, our organizational and Mighty Networks expert, really needed us to worry about that, perhaps we would break it up into quarters for the garden planner or something to that effect. And I can talk to her about that this Friday. But I think that breaking it up into sections will really help us to intake what we're trying to look at, because it just keeps going and going and going. And yet I think that it's broken up relatively well. However, we need it in sections. And so there's some that are smaller, so it won't work perfectly to break them up just easily into 4 pieces. And that's where it starts looking at, well, do we want to have all this information here? Or perhaps for some of these things like the water retaining elements that not everyone is going to end up doing, perhaps instead we just put links to the overall format of the PDF or Google Doc piece that is the external planner that can be printed. And then that doesn't take up as much space in this visual, in this, how shall I say it better, in this screen presentation of the wording, right? As we've talked over and over about together as a group, it doesn't work as well in our brains. And so really to be able to print these up is the best. And still breaking them up into sections like that would be easier, because as I'm breaking this all up, I've done the majority of it in the planner. So now I'm going to have to take the planner and put that into probably a brand new Google Doc from the one that I've already been building. And it's just a lot of information to intake. And I think that that's why Gardenary broke theirs up into 4 individual planners. And I can see the value in that, but I really like a whole system in itself that helps my brain to think better than having to go back and forth between books. And also the nice thing about what we have planned here for our version of a garden planner and journal is that we will have it in a very nice 3-ring binder for those who buy it published, so that they can continue to put inserts in, and they can take that year's inserts out and put that into another smaller folder that's meant to stay more in the house or be pulled out as a reference occasionally, so that their garden continues to be transformed with that planner every year. And you can go back and just have this beautiful catalog of what each year looked like without a lot of work. And so as we're going through this together and working on it, it's just as I had hoped, and I'm really starting to see pieces to help us make this more approachable, more utilizable, right? And so again, I really just get more and more excited. I know we kind of are already in there a little bit, but I hope as we talk about it, and yes, that's what we'll be talking about in tomorrow night's class, Plan Your Wild workshop, I hope it starts to really get you guys just as excited as what I'm getting. I hope it helps you to see that not only the step-by-step process that we're learning about in leaves, roots, and fruits, or that we're working on even with our personal reports, right? Because we have these nice personal reports all built in. And let me just close these and pull one of your reports up. See, I can use this sheet and go for a clean one and pull one of your reports up here. Looks like Tammy's is on top. And so I don't know if you guys have had a chance, as I mentioned yesterday, to jump into any of your reports, but this is where we started, right? That's what we finalized for each of you in the last couple of sessions. And then now you have the form that we're going to fill out with the breakdown of what this chart tells us here about the cool season, when Tammy is going to want to start seeds to be able to put the larger cool plants into the ground, when she wants to put the seeds in to the actual ground itself, not seedlings. And then when she's going to want to start off the warmer seedlings to put into the ground, and then put those in the ground alongside her seeds. And that'll all be lined out in a step-by-step little bullet list inside each month's box here. And so alongside all of that, we're going to have our garden planner and each of these classes each week that are going to back up what we're doing all week long. So does that make you guys feel like you have this really approachable, communicable support system that is going to really get you to a better place? And even like with Ken does, his cucumbers were looking beautiful. He's in a great location for plants, but they weren't put in quite early enough. Well, now with his guide, he'll know exactly, oh, I can't. If I put these in, I'm just going to watch them die, right? It's too late on my chart. I'm not going to be able to put those seeds in because my task planner tells me I'm past that date. I need to think about what I want to do with cool weather plants, not a warm weather plant like cucumber, right? So what do you guys think? Does that get you excited? Does it make you feel more overwhelmed, more supported? What are you guys experiencing as we're starting to work through this whole process together?
I like it.
Yeah?
Very
Would that box
active.
have stopped you if your box told you, oh, it's too late to plant cucumbers? Would you have made a different plan?
Oh yeah, be conscious of more conscious of the situation, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Instead of going out in the world fighting blind. Let's do this.
Or just playing, right? Not knowing if you're going to have success or not. And it isn't just about the success. It is about the experience. You had fun growing those cucumbers as long as they lasted, right? But isn't the true point when we're growing plants of that nature to eat the produce of our efforts, right? The products of our efforts.
Made a trellis out of bamboo sticks and some string I found.
Oh,
Trellis.
nice. Very nice. I'm reading alongside the Leaves, Roots, and Fruits, the Kitchen Garden Revival, because it goes along with the course so heavily. And so I decided to start that book without you guys. I'll finish it around when we're finishing Leaves, Roots, and Fruits, and then we'll read it together, and I'll reread it with you all. And it really talks a lot about things like that. If you want to go out and what to be prepared for. She actually did that one year, Nicole Burke, and did bamboo and twine, but she had it collapse. And so if you're going to do that, know that you want to have just a small amount of it supported up with your bamboo, and the rest probably needs to trail, right? That it can support a some, but not all of it. Because at the end of that chapter, she says, now go get your bamboo, right? Because you can do it, but know what it's going to be able to support. So if you wanted to use bamboo, just don't make it incredibly tall. Make it maybe 3 foot tall and stop, and make it like a hill or a teepee triangular formation, one way up, one way down, with the ability to trail off on both sides. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because it probably won't support it if you keep going beyond a certain point, unless it is a previously manufactured support structure or something that you've done with more than twine and the bamboo.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how well it works to put things like screws into bamboo, right? I've never worked with bamboo, so I don't know if you could make it more sturdy by using a different type of attachment than twine. But that was just a thought that she kind of threw out there, right? She's done all this and she's letting us know where things worked and they didn't work. And I've done a lot of this too, and we talk about a lot of the different things already as well. However, she's been able to build large gardens for years. That's above the level that I've been able to experience moving as often as I have. I've experienced large gardens. I've never experienced putting one together. It was my grandmother's garden, or for a short period of time, both of my grandmothers had a good sized garden. You know, these are things that are going to help us to have more success than less, right? That's the whole point of it. And so I think that we're doing this just so perfectly all together. We're getting it started so that we're ready and raring to go at the beginning of that year. And for some of you, that does mean that you're going to be able to put some things into the ground pretty early. Tammy, if you were to start right now, your cool season plants, you could probably put some in as soon as they're ready to go into the ground, right? Let's look at Kendez's report. And so for you, Kendez, surprisingly enough, you would need to wait an extra month. You don't want to put yours in January, but you could put yours in February, which means that you could start them in late December. Somewhere around late December, early January, you start them and you can put them in the ground February, along with the seeds that you don't put as seedlings, you want to put directly into your planter, whatever sort of ground, raised bed, container garden, whatever each of us are doing, right? And I think probably Mr. Benny is here with us. Yes, let's check out Benny's as well here. And then Miss Vanessa, you weren't there with us. So, oh yes, you were. You wanted to wait until you knew whether you were going to be in Texas or Alabama. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And so you'll just let us know and we'll start getting one built for you. Okay.
All right.
And so Benny, you need to wait even longer than I do, right? We had this conversation the last time. So you don't need to worry about getting something into the ground until April. So you're looking more at like beginning of February, mid-February, you would start your seedlings to put into the ground alongside things like your carrot seeds and your radish seeds that you wouldn't start as seedlings, right? And so I haven't put my own together where we can just take a quick peek, but that's a pretty good comparison. I'm a month earlier than Benny in the warm area there, right? And so we'll literally be able to pull those up each week as we attend these different sessions, right? You don't even have to attend every one. Pick the one you're going to be able to attend. We pull up your report that week. Bam, you know where you're at and what you need to do if you want to have this or that type of plant going forward, right? All right, pretty exciting, guys. I really do get a little probably exaggeratedly excited because that's just my nature and I love this topic, but I do think that you guys are going to get pretty excited as we continue to move forward, as long as you take the steps with us, right? And that's where this is such a great time right now to think, do I want to go small, medium, or large? You don't need to go large. It's better to go small if you're worried about success at all, right? So we're going to build in the backyard. We have enough space here, since we're not doing a Wally Peony, to put together the largest of the kitchen gardens that Nicole Burke talks about in Kitchen Garden Revival. And it's got a fancy French term. It's called a potager. And they spelled that really funny on my pot odor. That's what it says. And oh my goodness, it's just having a field day with my words here. But it's a potager. It's a Pottager. Okay. And it's a French style of kitchen garden. And it's an old form of garden that is continued forward, of course. So it typically is a very large space. Older you go, the more land each of us could have, even as peasants, right? People had some area that they could work with a lot of times at the poorest to the richest levels. And so a potager will have a large enough space to have a kind of enclosed feeling with an open middle part. And so my husband is a little upset with me, but I want to do that style. And that style typically has some either curve or L-shaped pieces to those garden beds to create that enclosed sort of a feeling. And so we're going to go with the L shapes, and we're going to build all 4 beds over the cold period. Hopefully we'll manage to get at least 1 or 2 done by the time it's time to start filling them with soil. But we're not worried about rushing this. We still have to get the ground leveled. We were going to try over the weekend. Jay ended up not feeling very well, and we pushed it so hard through this week. He needs to feel good going back to work tomorrow. And that's the whole game that we're playing when we're dealing with our gardens. And being realistic is going to get the most success, okay? Not that we won't have some success if we do more than we can manage, but wouldn't it be more fun to really be on top of whatever it is that we decide to do? And so that's why, hopefully, the ideal setup would be that we have at least 2 of these beds ready to go in the spring so that we can go out, level that ground, as we're obviously not going to be doing that now. The snow's down, the ground is freezing, it's not completely frozen, but we have to work on the garage in order to clear the space to build the beds. So you got to work out your priorities. And that's just what the same thing is for each of you, whether you're talking about doing indoor grow only because, like for Wendy, her porch doesn't even get very much sunlight, right? I've definitely been in that situation. So her best bet is to possibly have a few small plants out on her porch where she only needs about 4 hours of sunlight, and then perhaps having some inside of her home where she can provide the light for the plants. And so even there, do you want to start on a windowsill, or do you want to go with a shelving unit where you're dealing with several at a time, right? Picking something that feels like you can absolutely stay on top of it and really enjoy it while getting a good amount to enjoy, right? So that's why we can't provide that big pot for the salad in a bowl, as I like to call it, or salad in a pot, which would require at least a 12-foot depth and an 18-foot diameter. I have 6 smaller pots, and so we'll put 6 groupings of plants or singular plants, depending on all 6 of those. And then we'll rotate them. And it won't be a full salad for all 4 of us. It'll be more like additions to more salad or dressings on a hamburger or a sandwich or something that you could have one salad from. That I love my salads, and the Jay and the girls don't eat them as often. So every once in a while, it probably will just end up being a salad that I eat. Probably what'll end up happening quite regularly is everybody will just go by and pick at these little lettuce plants, the green onions, the chives, and just kind of eat them as snacks throughout any given day. The girls love to do that out of any kind of gardening that we're doing that's edible. They just go and they pick a little bit and they just eat it. And so that'll probably end up happening quite a bit. And then next year, instead of trying to have geraniums in the house, we're going to do this exact same setup, and we're going to add a nice big tub upstairs, perhaps even larger than the 12-foot depth by 12-inch depth by 18-inch diameter, and go a little bit larger, more maybe like even 2 foot wide and a 1.5 foot in diameter or something like that. So we can really get some good plants in there, plus these 6 little planters. But we're not going to worry about that this year. We're going to start with our little setup that's in one area that I can keep control of. as I'm working throughout the day, whether I'm in LH2 or here in Collectively Rewilding. I just get up and go, oh, they need a little bit of water, spritz them down, do whatever's needed, rinse them, and go right back to work, right? As she said, 5 to 10 minutes a day. So how easy is that to do right here in my office space? And so that's what you should all be really kind of daydreaming about. I think that's a fun part of the garden process, right? That anticipation and that buildup. And part of that is planning it. And so what do you guys want to do? Small, medium, or large, right? So we'll dive in yet again tomorrow into the same basic thought process, and that is Plan Your Wild workshop. And tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Mountain, 8:30 p.m. Central, and 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And so I hope you are all able to join, and I hope you continue to get a little bit more excited each week as we tear through this stuff. Please feel free to unmute and say goodnight, everyone.
Good night, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Sleep well and feel better. Good night, guys.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye, guys. Enjoy your weeks.